amigos, el dinero que el gobierno te debe, los créditos fiscales en Minnesota, que muchas familias no están reclamando especialmente en esta temporada. Así que el día de hoy tengo otra vez a Aisha Survey. Hi Aisha, today we are going to talk about credits. Obviously, it's an important topic because a lot of families, they don't understand how they can technically access because they don't know. And my question for you is, what is your number one advice for families that can actually access to the credits, especially from the Department of Revenue?
Yeah, the number one thing is just to find a reputable tax preparer to file that tax return. Even if you don't normally file a state tax return, make sure that you do file a tax return so you can take advantage of the tax credits, especially the child tax credit.
That is an important topic because 2 weeks ago we talked about some families or some they are divorced and one of the family made a claim for the
Mhm.
credit and one of the part of the credit. We are going to talk about the child credit, so important. Now, you are an attorney, know a lot about this issue. How families they can prevent to the misuse this credit from the other side. Will we say either the mother or either?
Yeah, it can be really hard. I mean, when you have, two parents or a grandparent, versus a parent, any type of kind of family situation about claiming a dependent. And so, one thing that's really important is to make sure that, as you yourself, the taxpayer who should be claiming the child, keep records of everything because you might need those if someone else tries to claim the child. Then you'll need to be able to prove, no, the child lived with me. So the biggest thing is the child needs to live with the individual 6 months or more out of the year is kind of the biggest test. And so, that can only be one person, right? And so just making sure that you have the documentation. And it kind of, unfortunately can sometimes feel like a race to file your taxes. Just know that if for some reason you go to file and it says, oh, dependent's been cleaned by someone else, or it doesn't allow it to go through, paper file your tax return. And then the IRS will kind of, send letters and figure out who should be able to claim the child.
Perfect. Now, one of the Spanish community we have is a lot of people they add so many dependents because they believe or somebody told them is the best way to not to technically not to get a lot of not to pay too much money in taxes or when they take the payroll. What is your recommendation? Have enough correct amount or don't have at all? No dependence at all, and you can make the claim when you technically make the taxes.
Yeah, so when you're doing like your tax withholdings, like your W-4 form, for any type of job or anything like that, they can be a little complicated, especially the way the form looks nowadays. So I really recommend, I mean, the actual goal of tax returns is not to owe any money and to not like get a huge surplus back outside of credits, of course, but from the tax withholding themselves, because you want that money in your pocket year round. And so it really is just claiming, whatever, amount of dependents you think you might have on a tax return, you can claim that. What you put on a W-4 does not impact what you put on your tax return. And
Mhm.
so you can, claim less dependence on your W-4 form compared to your tax return, but you don't want to be in the situation where you didn't have enough funds withheld from your pay and you owe on top of it already taking your credits.
Perfect. Now, especially in this moment in Lara, we are going to talk about the same thing because we try to encourage to prepare the taxes. You mentioned number one, they must to have they know what they do. We have the beta sites when technically people they can prepare the taxes for free. There is right now online, and all ministry people they can access to online or even drop off. But also some people they either cannot go to beta because the kind of money is a lot, or they don't have they don't feel safe. Now they have also when they cannot for themselves. Can you explain to us how safe is? And a lot of people they feel like, what about if they make a mistake when they're preparing the taxes for themselves? What is the consequence of that? So you're an attorney, and probably you already face or already probably take a cases, and people they make that kind of mistakes.
Yeah, I think, if you have a pretty simple tax situation, which the vast majority of people do, you can file your own taxes. I recommend doing like the IRS free e-file, like one of their options, because you can try to do that online for free without going to like a volunteer income tax assistance site, the VITA sites, or just, any software that you're using. It really is about using, your best judgment on, claiming credits, just making sure you include all your information, like all your forms, everything like that. But if you do make a mistake, that's what amendments are for. So there is the ability that, if for some reason you're like, oh, I've had it where, oh, I forgot to include, some sort of income that, I didn't like realize that I missed, or, things like that. You can always file an amended tax return, and that fixes the issue. And then you can be able to do that. And it's really, taxes seems really daunting, but for the most people's situation, it doesn't have to be as daunting as it seems. And you can also contact some of the tax, free tax preparation sites just to get some information. Like if you have a specific question, sometimes, they have the ability to chat someone just to ask a simple question while you're doing your taxes. You can look at all sorts of options.
Perfect. And we have a question from Facebook from Georgina. What is the difference if the child live with you, you support the college student, but do MA, I guess the day is not part of your household. So claim my child as a dependent? It's a good question.
Yeah, and it kind of goes into, especially when you're talking about medical assistance, it does come down to household, what is determined as a household. So someone can be a dependent on your tax return, for maybe the credit for other dependents, for example. It's a $500 credit on the federal level. They can sometimes be on your tax return, but be considered a separate household for other purposes. That is a good question, though, to ask if you are going to have a tax preparer, ask them about that. Or if for medical assistance, like talk to the person who helps with your medical assistance, because it's kind of more almost like a medical assistance question than a tax return question.
Now, again, you are an attorney, Alicia. Then because it's the first time we actually have a advocate, a work for a non-profit attorney. You are your specialization is especially Minnesota. Now, one of the questions people they keep asking is of the money, but I feel what I offer is not is a lot, and it's the question is a recurrent question. Can I make it kind of or asking for a settlement with IRS, or it's not possible, or is that taboo?
No, it's definitely possible to settle your debt with the IRS. I really recommend people look into that option, especially if your um expenses exceed your income and you don't have, significant assets or anything like that. It's called an offer and compromise with the IRS or a compromise with the state of Minnesota. You can do it with both revenue departments and it allows you to settle the debt for less than the amount owed. So you have to fill out some forms. It's a 656B packet with the IRS. It's a compromise application with the state of Minnesota. And you fill out those forms, kind of gather a bunch of financial documents together, and then you send it off with a good faith offer amount. And either they will kind of counter maybe with a different amount, or they'll accept it, or they might reject it. And so that's something where those forms are available for free. You can get information on both of the Minnesota Department of Revenue's website and the IRS website about what to do. There's even pre-qualifier tools to see if it might be a good option for you. I just mentioned that because all that's free. There's a lot of companies out there who are like, oh, pay us $4,000 and we'll like fix your problem for you. But I really recommend people don't go down that route. You can't afford to pay the IRS, let alone paying someone else to do this work that you can do yourself, right?
Exactly. Now, what about those people that already payment agreements with the IRS, but the income trust?
Yeah.
Can they make a new payment agreement and based to the new circumstance?
Yeah, you can. It's a $10 fee to change your installment agreement or payment plan with the
Oh, good.
IRS.
Mhm.
And you can change it. You might have to submit some financial forms just to show that there was a change. But yeah, you can reduce the amount of your payment plan in order to make it workable for you. The big thing is just making sure that you can still make that payment, like suggest an amount that is doable for you.
Perfect. Now, other questions that also they have, obviously, we are talking about credit, is important, but also these questions in bankruptcy. People they try to follow bankruptcy, especially in this. And my question for you is, they can also file bankruptcy in the IRS debts or no?
So there's special rules about getting IRS debts forgiven in bankruptcy. They have to be over 3 years old. And it's like a 3 or 2 year rule, like sort of situation. So not to get like too much in the weeds with it, but it is possible. It just doesn't happen a lot for people. So do know that if you were to file bankruptcy for other reasons, that's completely valid, but you still might need to deal with your tax debt separately.
Perfect. Today we are talking about the child tax credit and what families can access. Now, we especially talk about and what they can have in order to credit.
Yeah, and so the child tax credit on the Minnesota level, there's the child tax credit. There's also the credit for older children, which I always want to point out to people as a new option as well. Since the child tax credit on the Minnesota level is 17 years and younger, on the federal level, it's 16 years and younger. So there are those two different versions. And then on the federal level, there's also the additional child tax credit. There's the working family credit on the Minnesota level, which is the earned income tax credit on the federal level. There's also the K through 12 subtraction and education credit, which a lot of people don't take advantage of, which you can, for certain school related expenses, you can get a portion of that back on your taxes. So there's a lot of opportunities, and then now the homestead credit and the renter's rebate credit being part of the tax return, being done at filing season time instead of separately. A lot of people did them in the summertime, previously. So there's a lot of money on the table in these credits available for families. And so definitely especially, for those Minnesota child tax credits, you don't have to have any income. So you don't have to normally file a tax return in order to get them. So it's really helpful to be able to take advantage of those and file that tax return.
Especially if that money is
Yeah.
technically there, you know,
Yeah.
and I understand there are people that are afraid to Spanish community. Don't leave the money,
Yeah.
it's your money. Regarding when you say, and I hear a lot about that money we are left in the table regarding the schools. Can you be more specific what we are missing and what we are not technically claim for our children?
Yeah, so when you have it's the K through 12 subtraction and addition credit, and there's two parts to it. And if you have just even like school supplies that you've done, or certain like after school programs monies that you've spent, depending on if it's for one children or two or more children, like there's a certain amount of money around $600 that you can usually get back on the form of the tax credit on the return. And so it just depends on the number of children and the amount that you spent. It's a certain percentage that you get back. So it's just, it does require, like to know the amount. So generally, like if you have receipts from things that you've bought, maybe you've bought it online and you have the online receipt, things like that. So yeah, it's definitely like school supplies, a certain amount for like computer software programs, things like that. Um, a lot of it's the money that families spend anyway, right? In order to get educational materials. And so a lot of people don't realize that they can include that on the tax return. So yeah, look for it as the K through 12 subtraction and credit.
Perfect. Would you like to say something else to our group? Right now, today is a little quiet, but can give. I know you will be. Aisha, attorney, she is going to be in Minneapolis tomorrow. She can actually take questions. I will share with you guys all the information, and well, I hope we can see Aisha tomorrow. She's going to be in Minneapolis. Aisha, would you like to say something to our audience?
Yeah, I just really encourage people, to be proactive with filing the tax return. If you like have questions, if you need help, look at your options, finding a reputable tax preparer like we've talked about before, going to a volunteer income tax assistance site. Don't let there be barriers in place, to being able to take advantage of these credits that are there for families.
Yes, it's for sure. Friends, family, everybody who is with us today, we are going to see next week the information of Aisha. You want to talk to her personally, tomorrow. Okay, see ya next week. Bye, Aisha.
Thank you.